येषां मलं शरीरस्य च वैद्यकेन योपाकरोतं प्रवरं मुनीनां पतञ्जलिं प्राञ्जलिरानतोऽस्मि. Namaste and welcome to Kaivalya Yoga Gurukulam or KYG for yet another class in the Patanjali Yoga Sutras. I'm sitting in the premises of yet another beautiful and ancient temple. It is called the Karkadeshwar temple. More about this temple in a separate video. In this class, we shall study the sutra where Patanjali teaches us about the nature of this Abhyasa. The sutra is pretty long, but bear with me. And it goes like this. dīrghakālanairantaryasatkārāsevito dṛḍhabhūmiḥ. There are many words here with a lot of implications, so let's get to it right away. Satu. Satu means this, however. By this he means this practice, this abhyasa that he just defined in the previous sutra. This, however, this practice, however, this abhyasa, however, what is that? What does he want to teach us? He says, dīrghakālanairantaryasatkārāsevito satkāra āsevita dṛḍhabhūmiḥ. The key word in the sutra is āsevita. Āsevita is cultivation. This practice has to be cultivated. This abhyasa has to be well cultivated. Āsevita is cultivation in one sense, especially in this context. And then he says, dīrghakāla. Dīrghakāla means for a long time. Dīrghakāla, dīrgha is long, kala is time. So dīrghakāla means long time. Now it doesn't mean we get discouraged because long is a matter of perspective. It's very, very subjective. Later on, he will come back and tell us that those who practice with intensity, they can achieve steadiness in a very short time, right? So it's very relative. But in this case, in the sutra, in this context, he says, get ready to be prepared to cultivate abhyasa, āsevita, for a while. Don't expect things, don't expect results, don't expect progress, if you will, instantly. And it applies to us in this day and age, especially when we are so addicted to seeing results quickly. And therefore, it is a good reminder for us. Dīrghakāla. The next one is nairantarya. Nairantarya is nirantaram. Nirantaram means there is an element of continuity. There's an element of constancy to it, regularity in the practice, in abhyasa. My teacher, Bhagavan Baba, would say that butter melts very easily. It doesn't require too much effort or too much heat to melt a spoonful of butter. And he says the divine's heart is like butter. But even butter needs a flame that is continuously lit for a while. And therefore, continuity is the key here. So, dīrghakālanairantarya, so long time and with continuity. What happens if we break our practice and then come back to it and then break it again and come back to it off and on? Then it is that dīrghakāla or the long time is going to be longer, correct? But if we are maintaining it continually, there is a continuity in our practice, then the dīrghakāla can become shorter. Nevertheless, dīrghakāla, nairantarya, satkāra. Satkārāsevito. This āsevita or cultivation. The other feature is satkāra. Satkāra in this context I have understood it as devotion. You have to love your practice. You have to like your practice. You have to be quote unquote passionate about your practice. There has to be an element of attachment to the practice. Now all these words like attachment and passionate are ironically against the very purpose of yoga, but I'm just using it in a more of a colloquial sense. We have to love what we do. We can't do it out of fear. We can't do it for the sake of doing it. We can't do these practices as a ritual without understanding what, why and how. And therefore there is an element of satkāra. Satkāra is with devotion. So, dīrghakālanairantaryasatkārāsevito. What happens if we do all this? What happens when we cultivate for a long time with continuity, with devotion? What happens? Then he says your practice, this abhyasa, becomes firmly rooted. dṛḍhabhūmiḥ. Dṛḍha means firm, firmly. Bhūmi is ground. You are firmly grounded in your practice. The beauty of this path is being in the path is the goal. Being in the path is the goal. So being firmly grounded in one's abhyasa, being firmly grounded in one's sadhana itself is the goal. Everything else begins to unfold automatically. All we need to do is to be firmly grounded in the practice, and Patanjali makes it very clear. Satu dīrghakāleshu. Satu dīrghakāleshu nairantarya satkārāsevito dṛḍhabhūmiḥ. Now, what does Vyasa say about this? Vyasa points to us that this āsevita, this cultivation, has to be geared in two of these features that Patanjali pointed out. One is nairantarya. You have to cultivate the practice of being continuous, being constant, being regular. It needs cultivation. So don't get discouraged if after a few weeks you have lost interest in either your meditation practice or asana practice or whatever it is that you're doing, and there is a break and then you come back to it. Don't get discouraged. I mean, if we did that, then we wouldn't have learned how to walk, right? We fell 100 times, but we just took it for granted that we would be able to walk, and we are. Most of us are able to walk, correct? And therefore, how did that happen? Because we didn't give up. When as a baby we fell the first time or the second time or the third time or even the 99th time, we didn't give up because we believed. And so it is here. We have to cultivate this idea of constancy. So I find that idea of cultivation, of regularity, very positive here and encouraging. Then Vyasa says you also have to cultivate satkāra, devotion. That also comes with over a period of time. You have to cultivate devotion. Now, how does one cultivate devotion? To me, cultivating devotion comes from finding like-minded people, as an example. Satsanga, as it is called in Sanskrit, Sat Sangha is good company, if you will. Sat is truth, company is that which keeps you tuned into that truth that you and I are seeking. So, good company, good books that you read, good conversations, like-minded people, all of this helps us keep that idea of devotion cultivated. We are able to cultivate that love for our practice, love for the abhyasa. And therefore, Vyasa says these are the two important things. And then he points out 4 important traits that one needs to cultivate in order for us to understand this abhyasa in its entirety. I would like to introduce that 4 the way I've understood it as in parallel to the 4 things that Patanjali points out. Patanjali has pointed out 4 things: dīrghakāla, which is long time, over a period of time; nairantarya, continuity in the practice; satkāra, satkāra is devotion; dṛḍhabhūmiḥ. Dṛḍhabhūmiḥ is being firmly grounded. These are the four important, and all of these are cultivation, right? So āsevita is one of those words that leads us to all of this. Vyasa tells for us to be able to cultivate these things like dīrghā, kâla, nairantarya, satkāra, and to be firmly established in the dṛḍhabhūmiḥ, in firmly being grounded in your practice. He says there are four things. What are they? The first thing he points is tapas. Now I ascribe that word tapas to the first thing that we came across in Patanjali, because that is the order which Vyasa also lists it out. So I thought there is a correlation, and I'm just sharing my perspective on that. Tapas that Vyasa uses applies to dīrghakāla. Over a period of time, there is an element, whenever there is time involved, especially in practice, in Abhyasa, in sadhana, there is an aspect of time involved, right? Whenever there is time involved, there is an element of austerity that is required. There is an element of discipline that is required. That is called tapas. Tapas means tapaha, there is a heat in it, there is fire in it, that has to be kept burning. We cannot do these kind of practices as per our whims and fancies. One day we feel like it, the other day we feel my spirit feels something else and I want to be free. Now all those seem nice, but we get nowhere with that practice. At least the path that I am on, and I'm trying my best to practice along these principles, I know they yield results, wonderful results, and therefore I speak this with conviction. Austerity is very much a part. Now it doesn't mean you have to just put a loin cloth, remove all your clothes and stand on one leg in the hot midday sun. No, it doesn't mean that. It just means that be prepared. Have perseverance in your practice. Have patience in the practice. So tapas is one. Then Vyasa uses a term brahmacharya. Brahmacharya. I apply that term brahmacharya, and I'll explain that in a second. Brahmacharya to the second of what Patanjali points out. After dīrghakāla, he says nairantarya. So nairantarya is continuity. Continuity comes when there is focus in your practice. That to me is related to brahmacharya that Vyasa points out. Now this is a rather controversial term because popularly it has been most commonly misinterpreted. A very easy way of interpreting brahmacharya is abstinence. Now almost every place that you will do research on site or people you speak to will say it's abstinence. Brahmacharya is abstinence. Stay away from vulgar things, stay away from sex, stay away from women, this, that and all that. Now to me, coming from a culture where everything was celebrated, life itself was celebrated, the idea of abstinence does not make sense because abstinence is suppression. You're focusing on something negative, so your chitta is going to become negative. So it just never made sense to me. And therefore, I asked my teacher once, Baba, what is brahmacharya? How can I practice brahmacharya? And at that point when I asked him, I thought I need to practice abstinence. As a young boy, for me that seemed very important. And he said, brahmacharya means that you are focused on Brahman. And so nothing else catches your attention. None of the sensory experiences hold your attention because you are focused on Brahman, you are focused on God, you are focused on divinity, you are focused on spirit. To me, that clicked. So brahmacharya, acharana, means actions are oriented towards Brahman, Brahma acharya. And abstinence and staying away from sensual things like sex and other things which are commonly understood is just an incidental byproduct. Obviously, if I'm interested in Brahman and the spirit, matters of the flesh, including eating good food, seeing good things, touching good things, all of that becomes secondary, becomes less important, then they won't even matter to me. So when Patanjali talks about nairantarya, there is an element of constancy and continuity in practice. Brahmacharya to me applies there directly. And so that's how I'm presenting it to you for your consideration. So we had tapas, which is dīrghakāla, brahmacharya, which is nairantarya. Then Vyasa talks about vidyaya. Vidyaya means through vidya. Vidya. Vidya is education. Vidya is learning. Vidya is reading. To me, that applies to satkāra. Satkāra, which I said is devotion, passion, and love for your practice, comes from learning. We learn from people. We learn from good company. We learn from discussions. We learn from books. We learn from so many sources. That continuity in that learning has to be there so we can enhance our practice with devotion. That learning is vital because it helps keep the flame of devotion alive, devotion towards our practice, love towards our practice alive. If I learn about somebody else's experience, I get inspired. And there's a part of me that wants to experience what that other person experienced. And therefore, it increases my love for my practice. So, vidya to me is linked to satkāra or devotion. And the last one, Vyasa uses the term dṛḍha. Dṛḍha, which is the favorite of so many teachers. Dṛḍha is persistence. Dṛḍha is faith. Faith that is unshakable. Shraddha is faith. Faith that is unshakable. That also will get cultivated over a period of time. And when that faith in your practice, faith in what you're doing, faith in yourself is vital for being firmly grounded in your practice. We have questions about our practice. That's where we have to learn about it. We read about it. We discuss about some questions that we may have with others. We read about it. We learn. We meet teachers. We learn. Then we have to develop faith in our practice. We cannot constantly keep doubting, oh, am I doing it right? Am I going wrong? What if I spend 10 years in this and nothing happens? That kind of doubt will get us nowhere. Shraddha is the key to being firmly grounded, and therefore dṛḍhabhūmiḥ comes from Shraddha. And thus we have Patanjali's sutra very beautifully pointed out. Satu means this practice needs these qualities. Dīrghakāla is long time. Vyasa says, think of tapas or austerity over a period of time. Patanjali says, then nairantarya. Vyasa says, bring brahmacharya into picture to help you stay in that path with an element of continuity, regularity. Then Patanjali says, satkāra, devotion. Vyasa says, bring vidya in order to aid your devotion. And then Patanjali ends with dṛḍhabhūmiḥ. Dṛḍhabhūmiḥ is being firmly grounded, and Vyasa says for that bring Shraddha into your practice. And thus, Satu dīrghakālanairantaryasatkārāsevito dṛḍhabhūmiḥ, āsevita, cultivate with all of these qualities. As always, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to share yet another sutra from yet another beautiful temple. Stay with me in this journey as we patiently persevere in this path, in this journey of the Yoga Sutras from temple to temple, from place to place. But we shall try and keep this learning going, this flame burning, till we complete all the sutras that Patanjali has so lovingly given us. Until we meet again, stay blessed, stay inspired. Namaste.
क्लीं कैवल्यं